Achievement, a Dungeon Crawler Carl book club podcast.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Ellie. And in this podcast, we are reading, researching, and recapping each book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. This is a spoiler light podcast, so obviously heavy spoilers for the book we're on, but we'll try not to spoil any future events in the series so you can crawl along with us. Today, we're covering part one of book two. Book two is kind of short. We're just going to do two parts. So this will be the first half, chapters 1 through 12, inclusive. And dear listeners, we apologize for the delay, but our entire household got hit with the plague and kind of knocked us all on our asses. But we're back up and just as hilarious as before, if not funnier. So let's get this started. Jess, will you tell us the stats about this book?
Yes. This is Carl's Doomsday Scenario, Dungeon Crawler Carl Book 2, copyright 2021 by Matt Dinniman. There is something that I just noticed in the reproduction requests for this book. It says permission will be granted in exchange for nudes or gift certificates to Panda Express. So I'll have to go back to book one and see what I missed in those to see if there are any Easter eggs there. But the cover design is by Toby Dinniman. I'm assuming there's a relation there, though I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing. The audiobook narration again is done by Jeff Hayes. The dedication, which again is in the written but not in the audio, says thanks again to all my readers and friends. High five to all my donut holes over on Patreon. You guys rock. Also, thanks to everyone on Railroad for reading every damn word and letting me know the very moment I post a typo. An extra shout out goes to Fiona the Hippo and Blair Underwood. You guys know what you did. The release of this book also marks the beginning of the Dungeon Crawler Carl subreddit, which we are part of, as notated in some notes at the end of the book. The chapters, again, were published on Royal Road and Patreon first before being released all together as a final book. And currently, this book has a 4.5 rating on Goodreads and a 4.7 rating on Amazon. And those are the stats.
So do you think to avoid getting yelled at for just reading out entire sections on our podcast? Does he just want my nudes or does he want yours? Should we do both separate or like a collab thing?
I don't know. Panda Express is still in business, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, but if we're gonna buy Panda Express, I want it.
I've never had it.
Uh, might be too spicy for you.
It might be, considering this lemon Parmesan chicken healthy choice meal I tried to eat was too spicy for me. Man, sometimes I sit and think, boy, how far would I get in the crawl? And the answer is, lemon Parmesan chicken was too spicy. I would get nowhere. I would have fallen down the stairs to the dungeon, broken my neck, and that would be the end of this. But I digress.
Come on, babe, let's go. It's the great big door. We just got thump, 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 thump. God damn it.
Yeah. It'd be terrible. Right now I am nursing an injured knee that I injured weeks ago because I tried to move the weighted blanket that I was sleeping under to treat my anxiety. This like choking to death on a Xanax. Fucking bullshit.
To be fair, though, we are us, and we got the heaviest weighted blankets we could get, thinking, well, if a little is good, then a lot is great, right?
Yeah,
Maybe,
that is true.
Maybe overdid it a little bit.
Maybe.
Why is this not fixing everything?
I did not think you could OD on a blanket. I have been corrected. So.
ODing on a blanket is my favorite prog rock group from the late 90s.
Well, how about I get us caught up? We actually have a lot to talk about on this fairly gross episode. So how about I get us caught up with what happened before now? Right?
Great.
So Carl and Donut the cat survived the end of the world and now must compete and survive in the world dungeon. Mobs, a high prince, and other crawlers want to kill them, but the viewing public adores them. They picked up a third with Mongo the dinosaur. They finished 2 floors and are now heading down to the third. Odette makes a mystery recommendation that poses an ethical dilemma cliffhanger. And that's what's happened so far. So, would you like to go over with us what happened in the section that we read?
Certainly. This time on New Achievement. In this section, Carl and Donut get classy with a succubus in a tux. Mordecai's lips are loosened, and so are his trousers as he gets blitzed with a geriatric babe and her descendants. Our duo is now a trio, but Carl and Donut still get blindsided by a beautiful bastard and get bound to her biographical quest in a brilliant bit of bargaining after bashing the brains out of a bipedal bear and balking at breaking the base of the big top.
Wow. Nice. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you. That's that was weirdly difficult to actually read out loud. Jess, what's our crawler count? How many humans we got left?
All right. So at the end of chapter 44 of book one, we were just over 990,000. However, according to the Kill, Kill, Kill lady in chapter two, we have just over 700,000 remaining now. So we have lost over 200,000 more folks. So we are not doing well.
Oh,
And let's see, there were some important locations in this section. Ellie, you want to take us through the map?
sure. We only had a few important locations, but we only had a few locations to begin with. So we had the Overcity, where we have small, medium, and large towns of NPCs with some crawlers wandering around. Outside of those towns, we have the ruins. Apparently, Scullapendra's 9-tier attack destroyed much of what once was, and the ruins are filled with mutated and modified versions of its previous inhabitants who have been changed into monsters by said 9-tier attack.
And there are also bathrooms in the ruins,
Oh
which they
yes,
made it a
there's
point to tell
bathrooms
us. There are
everywhere.
bathrooms
Yes.
in the ruins. So you can't just pee on a ruin and think you're fine. There are bathrooms, which I thought was so
Did
funny.
did the Kuatine have like discrete bathrooms like they're aquatic? Don't they just kind of go in the water? Is that is there just like aghast that it's like noticeable when land mammals pee?
I don't know. Zev seems to like everybody, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure anybody else does. I'm sure it's one of the reasons why many of the Kuatine find us just disgusting.
Oh, we are pretty gross.
We are pretty gross.
Up in the ruins, we find Grimaldi's three-ring circus, three rings of absolute hell. Quote, the once affable stilt clowns have been transformed into tall, blood-thirsty monstrosities who want nothing more than to make balloon animals out of your intestines.
That was supposed to say bloodthirsty. That is a typo.
Yeah, no, it says thirsty. I just decided to ignore the S. Um, circuses are creepy, and I don't like them. They weird me out. But I also can't think of a time that I ever actually went to a circus. Um, wasn't really a thing that my family of origin did when I was younger. Like I remember a TV commercial for one, but barely.
I went a few times because with like my grandparents in Springfield, Illinois. Like it was never something my parents were going to take me to, but
Hmm.
when I needed to spend a week with grandma and grandpa so that mom and dad didn't just throw me in a dumpster, the circus was an activity we did. And at the time, animal tourism was a thing. And so I have distinct memories of riding on an elephant, which now I feel horrendous guilt about. But I like the stuff like the walking on the wire, the high wire, and the trapeze and stuff because I always like watching athletic people do coordinated things that I could just not even imagine to do. I mean, which in theory, that means I could just watch a bunch of people from a gym class tie their shoes. And these are things that I would have trouble doing. But I like watching like that kind of artistry stuff. So maybe even more like the Cirque du Soleil stuff, I guess, but not the animal stuff anymore for sure. And clowns, I could no, I could really do without the clowns.
No, I did go to Cirque du Soleil once in Vegas. I was I think.
Okay.
Um, And there was a thing at the end with just like this super crazy high up high dive. And they just grabbed some dude out of the audience and made him like climb this 3 or 4 story ladder to do this dive into this itty bitty pool. And it was absolutely nerve-wracking, like shit your pants, upsetting. And then he comes out, he lands it perfectly, and then he comes out and he like opens his shirt like Superman style. And it's got
Mm,
like the logo for the thing, like, oh, he was an audience plant. Oh, thank fuck.
hmm.
Oh God, I need a drink. Like, that was cool. That was cool, but there's no clowns. There
Yeah.
shouldn't be clowns. I don't know why
No,
that's still a thing.
the only clown I ever really remember being a part of my childhood in any way was Bozo from and like the grand prize
Yes.
game, Bozo and Cookie, which I think was that just a Chicago thing? Bozo and
It
Cookie, or was that a nationwide thing?
it was a Chicago thing at first, but they sold the franchise rights.
Oh,
So
okay.
there are other bozos in other cities.
Cookie
Bunch of
was a little
American cities.
sus. Cookie was a little sus for sure. He had a mop on his head kind of vibe. Like you weren't really sure if he was supposed to be there. Like Bozo looked scripted and done. Cookie kind of looked like maybe he just showed up on set and found some props, and snuck on set to see if anybody was going to say anything to him. So he freaked me out a bit, but yeah. And then I guess Ronald McDonald, does he count?
Yes.
Eh.
I mean, if you want real horror, supposedly these books are a horror series. If you want real horror, go look up the original Ronald McDonald.
Now
Go
that
look
is
at that
fucking
costume.
terrifying. That is
That will
fucking terrifying.
that will ruin your day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it like recently if you've eaten or if you need to eat, because you won't, because it's
And
gross.
it was not Al Roker. It was the other famous weatherman who was the first Bozo the Clown.
I think it was Al Roker.
Was it Al Roker? I thought it was a white guy. Let's see.
Willard Scott.
Willard Scott. That's the guy. That's the white famous weatherman.
Okay, Al Roker took over in 96.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
we're outside of my wheelhouse here. I don't have solid data for that. We did go to a rodeo once in like somewhere in the middle of Wyoming. Rather
We did.
unpleasant, lots of animal torture. But for the rest of our lives, we can say that this is not our first rodeo.
Right. Exactly. And we got to hear how a bunch of embarrassed parents got to explain fairly aggressive sex to their children after walking by the cow pens, where there was just everybody was fucking everybody. I would not have said before that cows had orgies until our trip that day. There was a lot going on. Like you could not have just moved. I learned shit that day. You could not have just moved past it.
Like a 1950s propaganda poster. The cows are on the grass, yo. They're doing crazy things.
It was pretty nuts.
Well, let's move on to important characters. We didn't meet a lot today. We didn't meet a lot in this section, but we met some important ones.
Yeah. So one person that we met who is brand new to us is Signet. A Signet is a half elf, half naiad, and she is an elite, which is something new to this floor. And an elite essentially is a participant in a show within a show. So we learn that within the world of the dungeon, there are like basic cable shows that are being produced that have other plots that are going on during the crawl that don't necessarily involve crawlers intentionally, but then crawlers kind of can come in and then sort of fuck things up. So she is an elite, but what's important to know about elites is they then have motivations that have nothing to do with the crawl. So they're
Mhm.
NPCs, but they're NPCs with an asterisk. This particular NPC is topless And she has got some very serious daddy issues related to the circus. And her show within a show is called Vengeance of the Daughter, which sounds very soap opera like. And she's a woman's got some ink too.
Yeah, it never clicked until this time that she's the tattooed lady. She's part of the freak show, like the bearded lady and the strong man and all of that. Like she's just covered head to toe. Um, it also said she has horns, and I never caught that before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it sounds like little horns kind of coming out of her forehead is sort of what I picture in when I
Mm-hmm.
picture Signet. And her tattoos can come to life and fight, which is pretty badass.
Yeah, I guess that was like the official like the I read that something that gets skipped when we talk about like carnival freak shows and whatever is that like the bearded lady would typically be naked to prove that she was in fact a lady with a beard. So the part
Uh,
where we keep seeing Serena Signet in just a thong. Also, I thought the audiobook was just kind of mispronouncing Serena. Like I thought that was her first name was like Serena and Venus Williams, like Serena Signet.
oh, not
But
like
yeah, no, it's like
Czarina, the rank.
Czarina.
Yeah.
Czarina, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a
she's
learning
just in a
experience for
thong.
me.
She's just in a thong,
It's
apparently.
got to get chilly.
That's gotta get chilly. But you'd think all those tattoos like racing around your body would warm you up somehow. I don't
Ooh.
know. It talked a decent amount about her breasts. At no point in time did it mention that she was cold. So I anticipate like if she was cold, we would have heard about it. It actually, I gotta say, I give Matt Dinniman credit. And again, I think we've mentioned on this show that some of the criticisms of these books that I don't buy into is that these books are sexist or misogynistic. And as a
Well,
card carrying feminist, no, I don't think so. He did mention her breasts, and it really was just that they're small.
mhm.
That's really all there was. There wasn't anything about, there was no lusciousness.
Mhm.
They didn't predict the weather. They
At
didn't
no
give,
point, at no point did she breast boobily.
no, they don't have emotions or feelings of their own. You know, they're not like weather vanes. So I really think Matt Dinniman did a great job here. She's topless, and that's what we know. So Signet causes a lot of problems for Carl and Donut, including kidnapping both of them, putting Donut under a sleeping spell, and forcing Carl to really take part in a city boss battle all by himself. So she definitely had a lot of responsibility in the first half of this book. And then the next important character, this isn't somebody new to us, but he was definitely has showed some new characteristics this time around, and that is Mordecai. So we meet Mordecai in his succubus form, who apparently is quite attractive, confirmed even by Donut, who says that she wouldn't kick him out of bed for eating crackers. And why would you? You can just brush the crumbs out of the bed. Like make that foreplay. I don't know what is that really a problem for people, but anyway.
Just
Um
have more blankets and lay down another blanket. Like,
yeah, I feel like if you really want to get stuff done, there's ways around things. But one of the things that is different other than his form this floor is that in the beginning of the book when Carl and Donut are picking their new race and classes, they get the manager benefit, and that is what Odette was referring to in the end of the previous book, something that she recommends, but it is of questionable ethics. um,
mhm.
there is a skill or an item that is available in some of the classes called the manager benefit, and that basically means Mordecai, instead of getting to go do whatever he was going to do for the rest of the dungeon, he essentially becomes team Donut and
Mhm.
is like their ace in the hole, but it means that he has to stay with them anytime they are in a safe room. He is there, and he doesn't necessarily know when that's going to happen. But what are some of the other things about the manager role that are different compared to when he was just a guide. I mean, he can definitely give them more explicit advice, whether or not they follow it. He can give much more explicit advice.
Yeah. I mean, that was what I meant in the summary by like his lips are loosened, is that he no longer has pretty much any constraints on what he can tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it also really serves a function in the game that makes him a talking head. So from this point on, Carl and Donut have like more context and information about the crawl than just about anybody else. Um, when he was going off about Odette, Mordecai said he would rather spend another 2,000 years in this room. And I'm kind of thinking that's how long he's been there.
Mm-hmm.
So Audette said that he was one of the greatest resources in the dungeon, even though he can't do his like magic admin lookup stuff anymore, but he's been here for so long and he's so well educated in the dungeon stuff that he's absolutely invaluable. And
Mm-hmm.
especially for Carl's build, which that we're gonna get to at some point, um, to make that build work, you have to have insider information. You have to know what's going on more than the average bear, even if that bear is on fire and on roller skates. So it really rounds out the party that they have this living codex of all things dungeon.
Mm-hmm. Well, and from a reader perspective, we no longer have two main characters or a narrator who is just discovering as he goes, where
Hmm.
everything is a new experience. They've got context, they've got lore, they've got, some idea of what could be facing them, and they have somebody to bounce ideas off of. And I think as a reader, that makes things more interesting. Um, because I think it gets old to just have the point of view of somebody who is seeing everything new for the first time and doesn't have these ideas of why. Because part of what we want to see is Carl and Donut piecing together and starting to understand this bigger picture and this thing as a whole. But think about if they didn't have Mordecai and they've encountered this vengeance of the daughter, this quest, we wouldn't know anything really about the
Hmm.
Leets and who they are and why this is. So I just think it makes it a much richer story to have this voice rather than waiting, every between floors to get an interview with Odette to get a little bit of information. So I think it's a
Hmm.
good move for them in the dungeon and for us as readers.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely has Bob from the Dresden Files vibes,
Mm,
where Jim Butcher wrote the Dresden Files books, and a lot of what Jim Butcher does appears to be out of spite and mischief. And his writing coach told him, like, you can put somebody in your books who knows about these magical systems and can like guide people, but don't turn him into a talking head. So Jim Butcher invented a character who lives in a skull and talks. So like he can't really participate. He's fragile. He's an air spirit. He lives in a skull for protection. But he is just a talking head here to give you more context and make it so that Dresden isn't completely clueless, bumbling around magical Chicago. So yeah, no.
well, this particular talking head is not infallible, as we learned, because he does have the ability now to go outside. And the first place he went was a bar. And we
As you
learned
do.
that a succubus can't hold his drought. That is very important. Chapter 4, we hear Mordecai teleported in the room, his pants down to his knees, eyes closed. Now, ladies, he said, his voice slurring heavily, one at a time, Granny first. My good sir, I must ask you to sheath your sword immediately, the babka cried. This is a family establishment. Where did those two girls and their grandma go? He vomited, sat in it, and passed out. The babka leaned over the counter and made a face, said to Carl, this is your manager? Yep. You two are so dead. Yep.
Yep. uh,
But
you
we
wrote.
learned, with the changeling, we learned how far do the changes go. It's like, how far do Dax's spots go? We now know
all the way
Which
down.
means anatomically correct, baby. So,
And I love that in your notes you said can't hold his draft. And it just immediately, the beginning of Two Towers, orcs can't hold his draft. Ah! Like,
that's what I was writing. Yep. Yeah.
I figured as much. I figured as
Mm-hmm.
much. Ah. Well, that actually brings us nicely into Tarantino Corner. Um, our our section about all things foot related that the AI enjoys. In the description for Mordecai as his incubus, level 50, also known as the Gigachad of the Overcity, incubi are the male counterparts to the infamous succubuses. The smooth, seductive, and ultimately deadly incubus can be identified by his stunning good looks, exquisite charm, and sensuous feet. They give new meaning to the phrase hit it and quit it.
This was actually a fairly innocent and footlight section, I thought.
This was a very world buildy section. Like we had in the entire probably first half of this section was just race and class selection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I think adds a lot of verisimilitude because even Dungeon yes, even Carl and Donut spend way too long in the character creator.
Even when Donut knows right away what she's going to be, she doesn't
And
give a shit what's out there.
you got to go through like 5 million classes. Like, I mean, Oblivion Remastered just came out and it's not that complicated, and I still spent a goodly long while.
I laughed when they said, we're going to spend the next hour going over these choices. I was like, holy shit. If it were me, oh my God. And I'd still stay, well, no, I know what I would do. And I don't want to give that away because we talk about that later. But yeah, there'd be a lot more clicking than there was with Carl and Donut. That's why they have somebody manage the process. Otherwise, half the
Hmm.
crawlers would die in that room just from lack of choice.
Congratulations, you have selected your class. The floor will collapse in 5 minutes.
Exactly. That would
What?
be me.
Ah, fuck.
Hmm.
Ah, then our second pedophilius. No, not gonna say that. And then our sexist, our second foot-related thing. Chapter 6, Enchanted Anklet of the Fallen Oak. Imbues wearer with +1 dexterity, +1 constitution, and gives +3 to the skill Double Tap. It's also an anklet. One would think that anklets enhance the beauty of feet like toe rings do, but they are excessive, jangly distractions that make you look too garish. The AI clearly didn't want me wearing this thing, but I wasn't going to say that out loud. Just
Yeah.
again, props to Jeff Hayes for that fantastic delivery of just quiet hatred of just the way he says too garish.
Yeah.
Like, I'm warning you.
Hmm.
So,
There's clearly an instruction there. And I just realized, and we are going to hear about this. Up until now, we have called Mordecai a succubus because I mistyped it in the notes twice. So I just need to say for the record, we know he's an incubus. We know the difference. We know the difference. I just, again, last 3 weeks, riddled with fever, typing this outline. That's my bad. So,
you would think that people in our age group who grew up when we did would understand Incubus. We have like all of their albums. Stellar was the best one. So let's move on to something we'll probably get less hate for. What's our favorites, Jess? What's your favorite achievement?
favorite achievement, Chapter 10, new achievement. You can't fight City Hall, but you sure can die trying. You have discovered a city boss. That's right. Let me say that again for the assholes in the back. A city fucking boss. Welp, if you're gonna go, you might as well do it with style. Just an FYI, as of this moment in the current season of Dungeon Crawler World, not a single crawler has faced a city boss and survived. And for good reason. Only a complete moron would voluntarily put themselves in a situation where they had to fight one of the most powerful monsters on the level. Reward? A lot of people are probably going to watch you die. That's a better prize than most of us get.
Oh, yeah, and he has to try and fight it on his own.
all by himself.
Uh, See, and I love that though, because he does have to fight it on his own, all by himself, but he also knows how to cheat it because he has Mordecai. But
Even though
even that,
Mordecai's Donuts manager.
he has that information, but even that wouldn't do it because then the tent is going to collapse and all of the bajillions of monsters are no longer under the control of Grimaldi. So even though he has the inside scoop, he has to use his agent provocateur, his compensated anarchist ways to screw the system over while saving himself. So it's
Mhm. Yeah. And that's the first time we really see him actively bargaining with and using outside entities. Because
mm-hmm,
through Zev, he contacts the producers,
mm-hmm,
and that's a pretty out there kind of step, that
mm-hmm.
I don't know that most would think of. I think that some of that does come from his abilities, to talk to these. So it was creative. Him being by himself didn't end up meaning, you're right, that he fought everything on his own.
Yeah. Well, and we saw him start to do this when he used his value against the Maestro. Like
Hmm.
he's using leverage that he doesn't necessarily specifically hold. He doesn't have that kind of hard power, but he has the soft power of being able to direct the value that he has.
He's
He is able
understanding
to,
his worth.
yeah, he's understanding his worth and that he's not necessarily the one who values himself. Of course, he doesn't want to die, but he knows that he is worth a lot to the dungeon and to the producers.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of what he's leveraging.
And
And
he's
I think it's
starting to
brilliant.
put together how everything works and everything ties together. Like there's, I think, right away, it's just immediate fucking survival. Like, how do I keep from getting killed?
Hmm.
Keep Donut from getting killed. But now we're starting to think about, okay, well, who is Borant and what are their motives and what's happening with these tunnel shows, and how do all these pieces blend, and just like anything, follow the money. And he's gone from understanding that bigger world as much as he can to very quickly using it to his advantage however he can, which I think
Hmm.
is different. I mean, we haven't met too many other crawlers, but it seems like with the things that he has gotten, the access to Zev, being on the shows, being able to talk to Odette, now having Mordecai as his manager, plus just who he is, and the little nuggets that Donut throws in there to kind of give him a wider perspective. I would hesitate to believe that a lot of other crawlers are manipulating things the way that he does. I mean, he's still over a fucking barrel, but the way he's moving in the dungeon, from everything that we've heard and seen, is unique. And I
Hmm.
think some of that now comes after changing his class. And I think that some of the skills that he just got really are going to feed into this, which again I think makes for a much more interesting book. Yeah, would I read a book about somebody just battling through the dungeon? Sure. But this idea that there's more to this, and there's more to the point of going through these levels, I think is a much more interesting, more compelling read.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Um,
would read about somebody sarcastically kicking ass through a dungeon, though. I mean, if somebody wants to write that series too, like, go ahead and I will read it. But I think this is better. I'm a
well,
lit RPG slut. I don't care who knows it. Good, bad, ugly, as long as they're snarky, just throw them at me.
mhm. Um, well, there weren't a lot of achievements in this section, so mine was kind of the only other decent one, which was chapter 5, new achievement. It's elementary, dear Crawler, and you thought all you had to do was bonk monsters on the head. You've received a quest. Puzzles and intrigue and mysteries, oh my. If you want to survive this world, you're going to need more than just a pretty sword-swinging barbarian. Some quests require brute strength, yes. But sometimes you also gotta use your noggin. Reward? We don't want you getting bored. That's your prize. So,
It says pretty, you need to be more than just a pretty sword swinging barbarian. I am just rereading Terry Pratchett's Discworld as I do every year. And
Nina.
I'm on sorcery. Yeah. And so I'm reading about Konina, who is definitely a pretty sword swinging barbarian. Yes. And I think to our earlier point, she would not be as interesting to read about going through the dungeon as our friend Carl here.
Not quite, no. All right, well, we talked way more about that when we were gonna, so let's move on to quotes. Jess, what was your favorite quote?
My favorite quote in chapter 7. This is something I just really felt in my soul. I want you two up early. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. What are we doing? Oh, it's going to be amazing, Mordecai said. It's going to be a day for the history books. It'll be the first time you two do exactly what I tell you to do. And I think anybody who's a parent, a manager, a spouse, fucking pet owner, anything, like I would give anything for a day where the dog did everything that I told him to do. Like the bar is on the floor, really. So yeah, I really this one spoke to me. What about you?
Mm-hmm. I had chapter 6. That was from Donut. He has an erection, Mordecai. It's very inappropriate. Mongo is appalled. In all caps, naturally.
What was Mongo's face to say that he was appalled?
Well, see, now we're going back to the previous one when we talked about that psychic link that she had with Mongo that we
Mm-hmm.
didn't actually see. Like right away, she knew his gender. She knows if he's hurt or not. She has some kind of interface. So maybe there's like a mood meter,
Mm.
and it kind of looks like an Argonian who's happy or upset.
You
Again,
think
Oblivion
he was
Remastered
just
just came out.
in her mind going, ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
or he gave her a look of just like, uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
uh. Well, all right, let's move on to our references and trivia. Jess, do you want to tell us what was referenced in this episode? Have you been working on your cardio?
Here we go. I said this last time, but I mean it this time. It's a decent list. I think I can get this in one breath pretty easily. Okay. Slender Man, Sherlock Holmes, Amazon.com, Home Depot, Lord of the Rings, Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, Star Trek, Friday the 13th, Jane the Virgin, Of Mice and Men, The Bible, Candy Crush, Shrinky Dinks, Geraldo and Al Capone's Vault, Roomba.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah, it is not a long book. So that's the thing that saved me here.
Um, yeah. Oh, and then I had a quick add-in. They talk about how the circus performers are controlled by like a hybrid plant spore thing, which immediately made my mind jumps to the cordyceps mushrooms, the things that make ants go all zombie-ish. It's kind of the basis for the Last of Us games. The zombies are controlled by mushrooms. Um, Recently, science found out that the cordyceps mushrooms don't actually mind control the ants. It body controls them and just moves their limbs for them. So if you were under that kind of mind control, you weren't mind control. You'd be fully awake and aware, and your body is just doing shit without asking you first. And that is worse. That is so much worse.
You've made the horrifying more horrifying. Thank you. The first time I heard about cordyceps, I was pretty young. Like, I was you don't think about worrying about nature documentaries in front of your 9-year-old or whatever, but that instantly became a nightmare. And I was pretty sure it was on the level of um of quicksand, of like shit that I was gonna have to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I was watching didn't specifically say this is only found in ants or only found in wildlife. I really, really was concerned that this was going to be a major problem. And so this is something I have
Major
had
problem.
terrors about to this day.
Yeah, no, it's gross.
Well, speaking of other gross shit, gratuitous violence. Ellie, I'll just ask, was there any grossness?
It's
Anything
all so
nauseating?
gross. It's all so gross.
There were
Uh,
like, I couldn't even pick one. There was so much to choose from. Like, Carl ripped the heart out of a lion made mostly of like mold and and disgusting. And that didn't even make the list. So do you want to take us through the rest of gross to it and violence?
uh, um, well, little behind the curtain here. I don't always have the exact quote I'm looking for, so I'll just put in all caps like what I'm looking for, and then because you have the Kindle version, you can quickly search and find that. So my original notes here just says Carl smashes a bear's face in, and then in all caps, worms, so many worms, fucking hell, ew, 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 Worms. WROMS, because it
We
was
didn't
too
spell check
gross
that part.
to spell worms.
The spell check
So,
was off to the side, vomiting. This was so gross.
oh my God, worms.
Ugh.
Mm.
Ugh.
I had worms once. They made me crazy. Crazy? I was crazy once. Um, all right, so chapter 9, quote, she stumbled and fell, tripping over a dumbbell. When she rose again, half of her skin and fur remained on the ground, revealing an exposed rib cage filled completely with worms, like a knot of ramen noodles. Oh man, I had ramen for lunch like half an hour ago. Ugh. The worms burst forth from the flames, reaching every which way. The skating boss was nothing but a skeleton now. A mass of worms covered the skeleton, as if it was wrapped in yarn. After the custard, I was tempted to just let her die on her own, but only for a moment. I formed a fist and smashed her head in with two quick punches. Then I stood, and I finished her off by pressing my foot against her skull and crushing. Her skull caved in easily.
But,
Oh.
would you like
Mm.
me to read the one that I found so you don't have to read both of them?
Yeah, yeah, no, you do. I'm gonna drink some water.
Okay.
Mhm.
Chapter 11. I looked at the wriggling mass of worms on the rock hard cone. I opened my mouth. Like the sign said, no chewing was necessary. The worms glided right in, entering my mouth and sliding down my throat. I met eyes with the ogre. Even he seemed shocked I'd just done that. I felt them in my gut, writhing, expanding, growing. Something shifted in my gut. The worm stiffened, grew more rigid. Can you hear me? I gasped. When I spoke, I felt the still growing infestation enter my throat like I'd swallowed like I'd swallowed a string that wouldn't go away. I gagged. I felt the ends of the worms growing up into my mouth. The worms in my throat surged into my mouth. The sensation was like I was suddenly vomiting. I felt blood start to drool down the side of my mouth. My throat felt as if I'd swallowed razors. Do you want me to read that one again?
No, that's fine.
It's
Once is
hard
enough.
to do some of these quotes because we go through and spell check, and spell check will go, well, clearly that's not what she meant because that's fucking disgusting. And it'll change some of the words. Go, no reasonable human would ever put this shit together in a sentence.
You heard it here first. Google Docs does not approve of Matt
Mm-mm.
Dinniman's writing.
No,
We do,
no, we
but
definitely do. We definitely do. But this was nasty. And this was not all of it. There was so much more worm content.
the thing with like the talking and like
They're talking in his brain.
they're talking with his face,
Mm-hmm.
oh yes, new flesh, primal flesh. We shall feed you to the clowns. The clowns hunger. Okay, that's like normal scary, but then again, having your mouth used, it's like just tell me what to say and I'll say it.
Yeah, because there's definitely something about having like the Borg collective of worms talking in your mind that you have to deal with now, which would just be awful. But to compare that with the physical sensations of like I mean, it's one thing for something to go down the wrong pipe, but it's another thing for something to try to crawl back up.
Ugh,
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 yuck,
ugh,
yuck,
eh,
yuck. So, and then he had to puke them all up when he was done.
ugh. I did love that, like something interrupts his puking, and then like changes and the story goes, and then he just goes back to puking for a while. Like
How long would it be before you could eat angel hair pasta?
never. Oh, that's my favorite. Why would you, ugh, man?
I
I
wish
think
I
that
didn't want to say ramen.
that's more like thick spaghetti. Like I don't like a thick spaghetti. I like an angel hair. It's light. It's not, it's not gach. It's not moving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yeah, I guess the worms would be more like a thicker spaghetti. I'm sure there's a noodle, but I don't know what it is. And I don't want to like udon noodles, baby. Yeah, worms and udon noodles. That's probably the closest. Ugh, yuck. Like cold udon soup. Mm. Nope,
I
you
was
wouldn't be
due
able
to
to do
go on
that
a
again.
diet.
Oh, pretty fucking gross.
Moving on. Ugh, just gonna need a. Ugh, okay. Well, let's move on to talking points. Um, there's an epigraph.
Yeah, there's an epigraph in the written books. And this is not, by the way, the only reason that I have since ordered all of the hardbacks. I have ordered us all the hardbacks because I discovered through reading the subreddit that there's extra content in the hardbacks. So we will
Oh,
maybe read that and make some bonus episodes or something. But there's an epigraph included in the written book, and this is what we got. If you hold a cat by the tail, you learn things you cannot learn any other way. Mark
yes.
Twain.
I've never heard that one.
That's a good one. It's a good one. And it so describes Carl. Like I love at one point when he calls Mordecai and is like, Mordecai, like bear on skates with worms for hands. What do you know? Like he is not ever going to consult you about a nice plan. He's going to be in the middle of the shit, figuring things out as you go because why not? You might as well improvise. You got just as much of a chance of that going well as anything else. And he is somebody who isn't going to learn something unless he sees it and does it for himself. Relying on somebody else's experience, he's still like, I don't know. So I think this quote is very Carl and very fitting for his new race and class. He
Hmm.
needs to get in and fuck some shit up in order for him to learn.
And yeah, no, and if you're holding that cat by the tail, you can't just like gently let it down because then it'll just keep clawing you. Like
Oh, you got
your
to
only
throw that
choice is to
fucker.
just keep going. Yeah, no, like you need to shot put that, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There needs to be a spin and throw for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
better hope that you knock that cat out because they will come back and get you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you need to just keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Smash as
Yeah.
you go.
Because it's definitely one thing to learn a cautionary tale or to hear instructions, but you always just, you know what? You know what this quote is perfect for? Us and our fucking traffic tickets. So we both, about a month ago, you came to me and said, I got a traffic ticket. It might be $250. I get it. And it's because there are express lanes and there are signs that say you cannot cross over the double white line for the express lanes, but it doesn't do a good job of telling you where you can exit. And so you, of course, found that out by going over the double white line 4 weeks later. And I have to tell you, hey, babe, I think we're getting a traffic ticket. Might be $250 because I was in the express lane and couldn't get to my exit. So I thought I'll just cross over these white lines. I mean, they make it so easy. It's not like they put a wall up. I can drive over paint. Paint isn't going to stop me. And then I saw the sign. that it was a fine of up to $250. So I learned nothing from your story. I needed to do that shit myself. And we learned nothing by reading the signs after 10 years of driving on the highway. We
Nope.
had to fucking do it. So,
Nope.
yeah, apparently that's how we learned too.
I mean, that's just very ADHD, isn't it? Like that's ADHD. Like I need the context. Like I can study beforehand. It's not going to sink in. It's not going to work because if I don't have the context, it won't crystallize properly. I
They
need to
say
do the
fine of up to
thing.
two. Yeah, they say fine of up to $250 for crossing the double line, and that sounds all well and good until you're going 100 miles an hour. I mean, 60 miles an hour, whatever the speed limit is. That's definitely how much I was going. And your exit is right there. Like they don't tell you that that's going to happen. That's what they need to do is say you're going to fucking see your exit, but you're not going to be able to get to it. You got to keep driving for two more exits and question whether or not this was a good decision at all, and then backtrack and or you can make a $250 merge, which is what I chose. So,
Hmm.
oops.
Well, mine was this magical weird thing where Denver and the surrounding areas, when you're on the highway, people stop. They
I like to do that.
stop. They don't just slow down because there's a truck or something. They come to a fucking stop. And it
Mm-hmm.
was snowing and the roads were icy. And I hit the brakes and I started to feel the slide. So I just hopped into the express lanes instead because it was like what, 50, 75 if we paid it on time? That seemed
It's
less
75
than
if you paid
like,
it on time. Yeah.
yeah, it seemed
Mm-hmm.
less than reconstructive surgery on our car and my face.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So, we've each learned our lesson. And
no, we haven't.
now I was gonna say now we won't do that again unless we really
Probably,
need to.
probably won't do that again.
Probably not.
Um,
I might be running late then maybe, but you know, whatever.
well, I just got a brand new tattoo uh, yesterday. Um,
You
so I
did?
had this section that it jumped out at me. We find out that Miss Beatrice had a tramp stamp of her childhood cat that looked like a stoned Ewok. Um, Carl says he doesn't understand why she'd have a tattoo that people would only see if they were smashing her from behind. And I must say, given the resurgence of 90s fashion, I have proudly and hilariously stated that if we get back to tribal and barbed wire tattoos, I am getting a tribal tramp stamp just because I think it'd be funny. Hey everybody, Editor Ellie here. I'm not actually going to get a tribal one because that's, appropriation, but barbed wire. Barbed wire, absolutely. God, it's going to be hideous. I love it. I'm sure other people have their own motivation for why they get tattoos permanently put on their skin, but spite and hilarity are good enough for me. So maybe that's why B got that tattoo, is because she thought it was hilarious and maybe it's spiting her mom or something.
No. B is definitely the chick that went out in low rise jeans with her thong pulled up over them
Mm-hmm.
so that you could see that she was wearing a thong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she's also the girl who went tanning and had the Playboy sticker like decal so she could tan the Playboy bunny into her skin. She
Oh,
definitely wore glitter like all in her cleavage and watched, before we had YouTube, like found out through magazines how to like make your tits look bigger by using like blush and shit. I know this girl,
mhm.
she got a tramp stamp because it was called a tramp stamp. She got a tramp stamp because it was slutty. That
Well,
was the purpose.
Donut does specifically say that the only thing Signet is wearing is a thong that Miss Beatrice would just adore.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, everything that B did was had to do with how men saw her. Other than the cat shows, everything she did was for men or her mother. That's it. That's it. She was a popular girl. But she was not a girl who hung out with other chicks. She was a girl who was a guy's girl who hung out with like the football team and also bang the football team. Like I lived with this girl from 1999 to 2009. I know
Yep.
this girl. I know this girl. I have gotten ready from this girl. I have had my nose in her ass crack trying to zip up her tight pants because we were going to the bar and didn't have enough money for cover. So we needed to be able to get somebody in line in winter in Chicago to agree to pay our cover. And that required the smallest amount of clothing possible. I know this person. I know this person.
Sound like you have a little bit of an opinion about that person. And he's got to say, hanging out with and banging the football team, that just sounds efficient.
I like football.
I
I
don't.
really like football. I think it'd be great to be able to have sex and then talk football afterwards. Like, to me, that sounds great. I think that would be great if you could, because then you wouldn't have to feel like an asshole when you're trying to time sex for halftime. Like, I think so. No, I do not judge this person at all. I'm just saying I know this person and I know their motivations and I know that there was nothing highbrow about the decision to get a tramp stamp. Like, be who you want to be. Great. But, you know, but I understand those. I understand that human.
Fair, fair.
I mean, I was with her at the bar getting in. Like, if I wanted to be the voice of reason, I could have said, well, maybe we don't go to the bar when we don't have enough money for cover. But I said, no, no, no. It's time to get out the pants that zip up the ass crack that you can only get into by laying flat on the bed with me. Like, I was fully complicit in this shit. So
I still think you were kind of dating.
you would not be the only person who thought that.
I mean, just saying, you pre-ordered me, you know?
Yep.
Um,
I'm an
oh,
enigma.
ooh, ooh. I had a relevant meme about succubi. Um, Especially
Incubi.
given our, well, yes, succubi, incubi, it's about both. Because originally succubi were always women and incubi were always men, but succubus comes from the Latin succubre, which is to lie under, and incubus comes from incubre, which means to lie on. So it's not that incubi are necessarily men, incubi are tops, and succubi are bottoms. Gender doesn't actually have anything to do with it. And if the sex demon in question is verse, then they're a pilcubus, from the Latin of to lie with or beside. So Mordecai is a bottom because we kept
So
calling him a succubus, and we
hold
know
your
what we're
horses
talking
there,
about.
trolls. We got it.
Mordecai's a
We
bottom.
got it. Mordecai's the bottom. You heard it here.
We will get we it is my mission now to get Matt Dinniman to comment on this distinction, and I am certain that he will agree. Mordecai's got big bottom energy. Different than big ass energy. But
He's gonna love seeing us in the autograph line in June. We got a month to figure out how to make that not sound creepy.
is he gonna do a Q&A so we can do I have more of a
Um
comment than a question.
actually,
In chapter 13, page 4, paragraph 13, like I have a Star Trek tattoo. I know what I'm about with this level of pedantry.
I mean, we know he can't be that straight laced because he was getting down with Granny and the granddaughters. Like, you've got to have a fairly open mind for that. So, I can't say that he would be one to follow expected roles. So, no.
Well, and he was thoughtful enough to go with Granny first. So that first easy one,
Mm-hmm.
Granny's probably not got great hips. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
minute.
Mm-hmm.
So, take care of that first and be gentlemanly or whatever.
Can we please never say
Incubusly.
Granny related to a sex conversation ever, ever again? I have just felt like perimenopause is nothing. I just felt every hormone get up and leave my body forever. Like, let's go back to talking about the worms, please. This is I can't
oh,
handle. I can't
oh,
handle Granny. Even I'm old enough to be sexy Granny.
Technically, I suppose.
Yeah, let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing that I thought was funny is they described at the beginning of the book as floor 1 and 2 being the training levels.
Mm-hmm.
which just, if you are a crawler, don't you just die at that point? Like, come the
Mm-hmm.
fuck on. So, floor 1 and 2 are training levels. And my question to you is, from a gaming perspective, since these are lit RPG books, what would you expect to see in these levels now that weren't present in floor 1 and 2?
So we're gonna have meta and we're gonna have structures. So like now we have all our pieces established and now we can start playing with them and moving them around. So like we have quests and we have meaningful interactions with NPCs. Like they're not just Rory and Lorelei, the goblin shamankas, they're Serena Signet and this big story she has and this ability for the producers to change her motivations and probably screw with her stats on the fly. You know, that says she has plot armor. Um, so like we had PvP, we had player versus player before, but there was like no official structure around it. Like you can kill other players for XP and loot, but there isn't like a ranking system for player killers or like a mechanism for retaliation. Um, we already had some pretty open-ended crafting stuff with the stuff that, you know, Carl was making, but he was already pushing the meta pretty hard. Like he understood that you need to kill these certain mobs in this certain way to get this loot drop to turn this thing into a weapon, and thus we had boom jugs. Um, we didn't see anybody else get credit for making something that got on the show, so he was kind
Mm-hmm.
of ahead of the curve there. But that's what we're talking about is we have our parts and now we can start doing weird stuff with them. We understand how the Legos work together, the system, but now we can start freeform building stuff.
So it's
Um,
not just that the mobs are going to be more vicious and
mhm.
harder to kill. It's that
I'm sure they will be.
everything, like the environment levels up with the
Hmm.
crawlers. Everything levels up.
Hmm.
Okay.
Like you had,
Cool.
you know, you had it was one floor before. It was just hallways and rooms. But now
Mm-hmm.
we've got buildings with multiple levels, and we've got a fake sky way up high, and we've got
And a night. We have
and
nighttime.
then we've day and night. Exactly. Yeah, we're adding complication and we're adding meta.
Okay.
So, um, and also with the quest and the storylines, I actually really liked it at first that like, oh, there's storylines. Like there's quests and things. It's not necessarily just World of Warcraft, go get me 5 seal skins. It's more like Final Fantasy 14, like go get me some plot. You know, there's an actual reason to watch this cutscene. Um, and it occurred to me that then that means that the it's less awful because the galaxy isn't just watching people dying for sport, but they're watching storylines and quests and whatnot, but the actors for that are all NPCs and slaves, and then just abducted slaves, which actually is more fucked up.
Yeah. The whole elite thing, because they're different from other NPCs in that they are created solely for the dungeon and for these shows. And so their motivations aren't just stay alive like these other NPCs or have a job like running a shop like some of the other NPCs. They are totally separate and totally unrelated. So, what they are thinking and feeling and doing is no relevance to the life and death struggle of these crawlers. So, it really is an interesting an interesting kind of subplot, that this stuff is. To me, this is like when the NFL released women's jerseys and stuff. It's like somebody finally went, like, hey, it's not just men that are watching Dungeon Crawler World, it's women too, and somebody wanted to appeal to women by making it a fucking soap opera when probably the women wanted to watch people rip each other's throats out anyway, and we're fine. But it's just this other thing that's happening, um which is just like, and I really had to struggle finding a TV show that I could think of that would everybody would know because of streaming now. And I just kept thinking, like, what if what if Ultron showed up in Boy Meets World, or what if Skeletor showed up in The Office? And that's essentially what's up, because you have these shows and then you have these random fucking characters who have nothing to do with your plot and have totally different motivations, just shows up on set one day and is like, fucking go, and that's what it's like with these shows and the crawlers.
Hate The Office. I've never finished an episode of The Office. I can't. The awkward makes me want to die.
I think it'd make The Office better.
Yeah. And he would side with the autistic guy, not the guy bullying the autistic guy. Um, yeah. It it's so it is weird though that we don't have like a single touchstone, single cultural thing
Mm-hmm.
because we have streaming and we have so many options. There isn't a thing that everybody's watched.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know, make a Mexican luchador showing up at the GBBO tent. Just your challenge today is patisserie week, so we want 8 identical slices of opera cake. And then from the top rope, like,
Yeah. Or
oh,
like,
it's Paul Hollywood with a steel chair. Like,
well, I was thinking, like, I mean, Hecla could have shown up in Game of Thrones and it would have
hmm
been fine, so maybe, but maybe like Le Movement, when Le Movement was running around. Have we had them yet?
yeah.
When Le Movement was running around, them just showing up in Game of Thrones. That would have been very funny. But yeah,
The ice
there's
giants
not.
are attacking. Look, 50 African men with AK-47s.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
ice giants are retreating. Like, well,
It would have made it a
fuck that
lot
plot.
easier to see the final episodes,
Oh God.
because just just from those gunshots being fired, at least we would have gotten some additional perspective.
I mean,
So,
you if that were the case, then the flaming swords would have illuminated, which
yeah.
was so it was such an obvious fucking device that you should have used. Like her whole deal is she's from like the Lord of Light, and here's some fire and light and heat and this massive cloud of cold and darkness. We're gonna fight it back with this fire that consumes, but we'll be able to see what the fuck is happening. No, 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 no. Those are just gonna go out and you still can't fucking see anything.
Well, and then it's like nobody remembered that there
Ugh.
was a second chance spell, because they kill everybody once and then they're all going to get up again. At least they
Mm-hmm.
didn't have Clockwork Triplicate.
That's why you have to burn the corpses so that they.
Triplicate would have made it harder to watch.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm fine.
That's why we
I'm
read now.
fine. I'm normal.
That's why
This
we're
is
readers. We're readers.
okay. Okay. Other cool thing we ran into, um, it's something that gets brought up in stuff about the Elder Scrolls, and by stuff about the Elder Scrolls, I mean stuff that Michael Kirkbride wrote after he was no longer working at Bethesda. Um, but it's this idea, it's an enantiomorph. Um, Enantiomorph. So that's when you have two things that are equal but opposite. Think like your hands, you know, they're the same,
Mm,
but they're opposite. They're flipped and they're equally powerful, is the idea. And so you have this standoff, basically. You have Signet and her little army, and then you have the circus and its little army. And every night they fight, and then every day they go back. And it's just this ongoing status quo, it's stalemate. And then you, the player character, you show up and you pick one of those sides. And that sets the enantiomorph off kilter, and then you can have one side win over the other. So, like the Civil War in Skyrim, you have 4, I think, cities that are on the Imperial side, and then like the same number who are on the Stormcloak side, and then Whiterun is like undecided. And then whichever way you push, whichever way you as the player character decide, that tips the balance, and it's no longer even. And that gives you as a player character a sense of a lot more agency than you actually have, because you don't then go take out the entire Imperial army, or you don't go then put down the entire Stormcloak rebellion. You just give it enough of a nudge that the avalanche can then go. The rock slide
mhm.
can slide. And yes, you threw the first rock, but the rest of it happens on its own, and it makes it feel like you have a really big presence in this world. So Carl runs into this enantiomorph and kind of against his will has to pick a side and thus lend his strength to it. And it would then end the conflict. It would also kill him. Um, but that's not important to this concept, really. And it's just, it was really
Or
fun
the
because I learned
producers of
about
the
that.
show. I mean, it
Yeah.
really only Carl gave a shit whether Carl lived or died.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm sure there's people betting on him too. But yeah, no, that was really fun because I learned about that years ago and just finally have a reason to use that knowledge.
Pay attention in school, kids. You have no idea when that stuff is going to come up.
Yes. Read your weird metaphysical blog posts by former game devs. Um, let's see. Okay, what else do we got?
There was one bad thing that happened, which is not the worms separately. Um, Zev, it kind of went by quickly, which is why I wanted to mention it. Zev mentioned there are no, there are crawlers around you, but there aren't nobody that interesting. Don't hook it up with any other crawlers; they're too boring. And later, Carl and Donut come upon the remains of the Bautista family that had been killed by the lemurs. And
Hmm.
Carl thinks back to that moment of Zev saying, "Don't get with any other crawlers," and there's some guilt there, and they move really quickly through it, but I think that's an important moment for Carl, which is, there is part of this of, if I had been there, if we had gone out and found other people, could this have been different? Could I have saved these people? So it wasn't anything that was dwelled on in this particular section, but I still thought it was an interesting moment. It was worth calling out.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because again, I mean, you could barely save yourself in this,
Mm-hmm.
let alone can you say, like, the stuff with Meadowlark was in the training levels, and it was super engaging and unique and weird. Um, and it was nice to hear from Brandon and company that, lots of them survived and were able to pick classes where they got their mental faculties back. That's that's going to be fun. Um,
I want a show of just that process. That's what I want. I want a series of novellas
maybe you
about
should write some
that
fanfic, darling.
that process. Oh, that'd be that's good stuff there.
Hmm.
But anyway, continue.
Um, no, I mean that was a very unique, weird thing. It was this whole big ass group of infirm meadowlarks, people who are completely vulnerable and on the ground. The Batista family is just another group of crawlers. And they got blindsided by some lemurs and then they got fucked up.
I think Carl knows at this point that he's better, that they're better than
Hmm.
other people. I think it's the start of him seeing that his presence really can make a difference, not just for him, but for other people. I mean, it was an obvious imbalance with the Meadowlark people because they were so infirm and so weak. But now it isn't, they've got Mordecai, they've got the information, from Zev, they've got Odette, they've got the classes and the races that they were able to choose from were special. They had to have certain achievements and certain level skills in order to choose what they chose. So I think there's starting to be this sense of, I can swing the balance, not just for me, but for other people, just by virtue of who I am and what I do. And that's not like a fully formed thing yet, but I think in this moment, he it starts to kind of fester, like, could I have done something? Would I have done something? Would my presence have made a difference? And he had just taken what Zev had said really for granted, like, okay, and then kind of moved on. And now that's is a point that's sticking out to him in his mind, like, should I have done that? So I think it's not necessarily the sign of great change in him yet, but I think it's one of those moments that eventually we could look back on and go, this was the spark of something. This was the turning point for him.
Hmm. 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 Speaking of the spark of something, Carl's new class is the compensated anarchists. Uh, when the oligarchs want to manufacture a social movement, or better yet, stop one in its tracks, they first must bring in the big guns, the paid protesters, the agent provocateur. This monk/rogue hybrid class is a trap-making, bomb-making social media dynamo. The compensated anarchist will happily throw a Molotov through a window one moment and step in front of a camera to plead for the violence to stop at the next. Um, I think this class is perfect. It is absolutely perfect. It is a meta class. It requires a whole bunch of stat changes. Kind of knocks him down in strength back to where he was before, and then he's got to really grind these handful of skills. But it also fits perfectly with having a manager because you have to know more than the average bear, even if that bear is on fire. Um, because
Has
that's
worms
what
for hands.
ugh, the worms. Um, but it's perfect for the dungeon because the dungeon is horrible. Stop! I'm not looking at you. She's making like worm things with her fingers. That's just I'm not.
It's an audio medium. They don't know what I'm doing.
That's why I just told them what they're doing. Um, the agent provocateur classically shows up the most in our lives as cops who are sent into protests to change it from a peaceful demonstration to a violent riot that can then be put down by the police. And this has been documented and seen time and time and time and time and time again. If you're ever at a protest and there's a bunch of dudes with reflective shades and like high and tight haircuts and weirdly clean boots, get the fuck away from them. They are not there to protest. They are there to get people hurt. Um, but that situation only works if protesting is legal, because then you have to go nudge it to make it look that it's not a protest anymore. It's a violent act and it can be repressed with violence. If you're just running a tyranny and there's a protest and that's illegal, then you can just tear gas and shoot those people. But that does not make good TV. That does not make good drama. That makes tyranny and a very brutal kind of stability. But this existing structure, and we're kind of going back to Mrs. Parsons' head, where like it would have made sense for Mrs. Parsons' head to go with Mrs. Parsons' body in the initial collapse. But because Mrs. Parsons' head was outside of the building, it stayed behind because it
Mhm.
wasn't indoors. And that's the kind of video game logic that the crawl runs on. And now that's exactly what Carl has been exploiting. And that's exactly what this class is built to continue to exploit. Um, which is going to be really fun and entertaining, but also just built perfectly for this kind of book because then we know more of what's going on, but we don't know all of it, but we know
Mhm.
enough to break it. And I think that's going to be really fun.
I just wanted a couple of these people now to help us fuck shit up. Like, come on. Oh, maybe this will inspire some Carls.
That'd be nice.
That'd be
We in no
nice.
way condone any kind of political
None.
violence.
None at all. Not even a little bit.
Nope.
Um,
We're just talking about entertainment.
yep. Speaking of one more section that I wanted to bring up was this moment that just killed me in chapter 5 when Mongo gets hurt or Mongo does something and Donut goes off to help Mongo and Carl says he's not your child, Donut, he's a pet. We don't put our lives in danger for our pets.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I regretted it the moment the words came out of my mouth. Donut looked as if I'd slapped her. Suddenly felt like an enormous asshole. Um, Now, later on, and not too long after that, he does resolve it. He says, "Let's kill the guy across the street, examine the bodies, those crawlers out there, and then check out the circus." Sound like a plan, partner. Donut paused and then nodded slowly. Okay, partner. So he does like in that short span he really does have to acknowledge a lot of things, that his relationship with Donut has fundamentally changed because Donut has changed, but also
Hmm.
he has changed.
Hmm.
Um, but all I could think is, would I risk my life for my pet? Yeah, yeah, I would. I wouldn't even think about it. You, somebody would need to stop me because I would absolutely do it, and you would too. If you thought Detritus was
Hmm.
going to get hit by a car, you would be in
Mm.
front of that car, pushing him out of the way.
Hmm. Except
So,
I don't live in a TV show, so I wouldn't push him out of the way. I would grab him as I continued to move
yeah,
out of the way.
yeah,
You
you
know, and
know,
even if he's too heavy to move, fucking tackle him and
I
keep
think
moving out of the way. That's like run in front of the car, stop, shove the person out of the way, stand there dramatically as you die. That's ridiculous. What are you
I,
doing?
I think there are a lot of people, regardless of how sound their tactics might be, would risk their lives for their pets without thinking twice or
Oh
without
yeah,
thinking. You know,
he'd be a grumpy
um,
asshole, but he's our grumpy asshole.
he's our grumpy asshole, and but to say that we don't risk our lives for our pets, which is of course the more logical and pragmatic way to approach things, to say that to the pet who can understand you
Hmm.
is, oh, oh my god.
Makes you
Oh
want to
my,
say the
that's like,
opposite to detritus just in case he can understand.
that's to me, it's like the equivalent of saying to your wife, I liked you when you were thinner. Like, just, I
Mm.
cannot think of what you could say to somebody that would be more hurtful and worse, you know? So, but he at least caught it when he said it, because obviously, if he still thought of Donut as a pet, they wouldn't be where he clearly is beyond thinking of Donut as a pet, which is why those words can come out of his mouth without him seeing the giant flag saying but then when he calls her partner, so much of their relationship has evolved and is continuing to evolve. We hear about how Donut, she's gonna jump up and take a look, and he's gonna give her a bunch of instructions. But then she comes down, and she says, "Oh, I looked at this, and I thought of this, and here's this plan, and we can do this." So her skills are evolving. Um, she's now this mother of this pet, which he of course was trying to keep her from risking her life for, which objectively is the right call. Um, so it's really interesting how their relationship has evolved. Did you have any thoughts about that or that section?
Entirely. I mean that part hurt. But the part where then after they get kidnapped by Serena's Signet and he wakes up alone, and the first thing he goes, Donut, where I don't want to be alone.
I don't want to be alone.
Like, yeah, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah.
I think that was our bonk bonk on the head. Like, she's not just a pet, she's his best friend, his only friend, his
Mm-hmm.
partner, and she is a person.
Mm-hmm.
100,000%. And
And then
yeah,
when
she is absolutely growing up and getting smarter. And then the whole
mhm.
thing about like we're guest stars. You can't be more popular than the mains on the TV show.
She has got some solid insights, some things that Carl needs to hear, because Carl could easily go off unchecked and do something fucking stupid because he doesn't hear no. He doesn't respect a lot of other people's opinions. He wants
To be
to
fair,
swing the cat around by the tail himself to learn. And so she is one of the few voices that can get to him. And she's got some really important things to say. Um, and then when he's sitting there at the end and she's still unconscious and he's got Mongo, he's saying, "This is all I have. This is my family. This is all there is." Oh, these fucking books. These fucking books. Like, how dare they make me cry? How fucking dare they? I don't read this kind of stuff because I want to feel emotions. What the hell? I
It's
want to
very rude.
laugh. Oh
It's
my
very
God.
rude.
So, yeah. So it's to give me feels multiple times in one half of one book. Who the fuck do you think you are, Matt Dinniman? Seriously. Jesus fucking Christ.
Well, uh, let's move on to are we done? Do we both feel better?
Yes, I'm okay now.
Okay, okay. Okay, on to discussion questions. Um, the discussion questions are so that you, our dear listeners, can discuss as we crawl along together. Please email us your answers or leave a YouTube comment. Our favorite answers will be read on the air during the next show. So last week's question was, what creature would you want as a pet in the dungeon? We got a couple of answers from Zoe S. A dire wolf, but not one of those fake ass dire hounds they cloned recently.
Fair.
And then from Kate G, a murder of attack crows. I guess one crow would be kind of silly. But yeah, no, you definitely want a whole murder. Um, yeah, yeah.
A flock behind you.
So our this week's question, what race would you choose? Jess, what did you decide?
Elf. And I know that sounds basic, and it is, but my reasons are very shallow. I want to be hot and athletic. I have never been either one of those things, and I would want the opportunity to be both those things. So, elf all the way.
Fair, fair.
How
I
about
would
you?
have to go. I would have to go tiefling. It's the traditional choice for trans femmes, that the half demonic looking people. I don't think I'd go with the hooves. I think I'd want regular feet because the hooves you just can't wear cute shoes. But no, it's traditional for trans femmes to roleplay as tieflings because we are outcast and persecuted in real life. So we pick the class and the species that is outcast and persecuted in D&D. It's what we know to do. You don't want to
Makes
retrain.
sense. Makes sense.
Well, I think that'll wrap it up for this episode. Join us next time for Dungeon Crawler Carl Book 2, Part 2 of Carl's Doomsday Scenario, chapters 13 through the epilogue. If you like our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and subscribe on YouTube, rate us on Spotify, email us your comments, questions, corrections, and the answer to what race you would choose to newachievementpod@gmail.com. So until next time, be sure to get out there and kill, kill, kill. I'm going to start leaning into this as revenge for the worms thing.
I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have. God damn it.
I bet I could do a whole episode like this.
Okay, we're done now.
We're
Bye.
never done. You live with me. You married me.